Present arms. Order arms. Center face. Forward march. Right, left, left, right, left, 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 right, left, 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 right, left. Details halt. About face. Parade rest.
Go ahead and have a seat. Michael, that's not the music on this iPad. Where'd you get that song from? Hey, welcome everybody here to our Memorial Lane. This is just a great place to have these kind of activities, and we're so fortunate to have it. The Memorial Lane Committee, thank you guys for putting this together and putting these things together that we can honor the soldiers and do those kind of things. So give them a big hand. They've done a lot of work on this. I also want to recognize Robert Silvestri with the bagpipe played. He played the music today in honor of his father, Angelo Silvestri, who served in the Army and was a recipient of the Bronze Medal of Honor. So thank you for that, too. And of course, our presentation of colors was done by the Brazos Valley chapter of Sons of the American Revolution. These guys here, they did a good job for us. Thank you. Hope everybody's having a great Memorial Day weekend, but we want to make sure that we set aside this part of the day to recognize those that have given the ultimate sacrifice, and that's what the Memorial Day is all about, the commemoration of those that give that ultimate sacrifice and that giving their lives in battle, or probably sometimes after the battles and stuff, and lost their lives and stuff. So this is a great thing to do here, and we're going to be moving on down to the Granbury Square, and we'll continue to do the commemoration for Memorial Day. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over now to Chaplain Doug Pruitt, and I think he's here yet. There he is.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us this great and beautiful morning. If you will, join me in a time of prayer. Father God, I'm so thankful for who you are, and I'm thankful for your blessings upon this great country. Lord, and we stand here today on Memorial Day to memorialize those men and women that give that great sacrifice for this awesome nation that you have blessed. And Lord, I ask for your favor to lay upon those families of those that have given that great sacrifice. Lord, I ask for you to continue to lay that favor on this country, this community. And most of all today, I thank you. I praise and worship your name. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Amen. If you will, stand, remove cover. We'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll utilize this flag as it was presented.
Present arms.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Order arms. Parade rest.
Few folks even knew his name, but a hero, yes he was. Left a boy, came back a man, Still many don't understand about the reasons we are free. I can't forget the look in his eyes, or the tears he cried as he said these words to me. All gave some, and some gave all. Some stood through for the red, white, and blue, and some had to fall. And if you ever think of me, think of all your liberties and recall. And some gave all. Now Sandy Kane is no longer here, but his words are oh so clear as they echo through this land. For all his friends who gave their all, who stood the ground and took the fall to help their fellow man. Love your country and live with pride, and don't forget all those who died. America, can you see? All gave some gave all. Some stood for the red, white, and blue, and some gave it all. And if you ever think of me, think of all your liberties and recall. And if you ever think of me, think of all the liberties and recall. That all gave some gave all.
Thank you, Michael, for that. Memorial Day is a day of celebration in the United States, and each May they honor this in remembering of the military men and women who died while serving in the nation's armed forces. Now, this differs a lot from the Veterans Day, which is a celebration in September. That is where everyone is honored that served in the United States military, and whether or not they died in service or not, or the people that are presently serving. From 1868 through 1970, Memorial Day was celebrated on May the 30th each year. Since then, the official nation's Memorial Day holiday traditionally celebrated on the last month in May. Originally called Declaration Day, from the early tradition of decorating graves with flowers, wreaths, and flags, Memorial Day is the day of remembrance for those who have died in the service of our country. It was first widely observed in May 30th, 1868, to commemorate the sacrifice of Civil War soldiers by the proclamation of General John A. Logan of the Grand Army of the Republic and an organization of former Union sailors and soldiers. During the first national commemoration, former Union General and sitting in Ohio Congressman James Garfield made a speech at the Arlington National Cemetery, after which 5,000 participants helped to decorate the graves of more than 20,000 Union Confederate soldiers who were buried there. And I'd like to share that quote with you. As I was reading through some of this, I looked at that and I thought this was really something that I'd like for this community to hear. We do not know one promise that these men made, one pledge that they gave, or one word that they spoke. But we do know that they summed up and perfected by one supreme act the highest virtues of men and citizens. For the love of country, they accepted death, and thus they resolved all doubts and made immortal their patriotism and their virtue. That's what Memorial Day's all about. The event was inspired by local observances of the day that had taken place in several towns throughout America. In the 3 years after the Civil War in 1873, New York was the first state to designate Memorial Day as a legal holiday. And so by the late 1800s, many more cities and communities observed Memorial Day, and several states had declared it a legal holiday. After World War I, it became an occasion of honoring those who died all in American wars, and then more widely established as a national holiday throughout the United States. So in 1971, Congress passed the Uniform Monday Holiday Act and established that Memorial Day was to be commemorated on the last Monday of May. So Memorial Day is commemorated at Arlington National Cemetery each year with a ceremony of which a small American flag is placed on each grave. Traditionally, the president or the vice president lays a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldiers. About 5,000 people attend that ceremony annually. So that is what we are here today to do, to commemorate those of Hood County and Granbury on the ultimate sacrifice that they gave for our freedom today. So I want to thank everyone for being here, and just remember what Memorial Day represents here in Granbury, Texas. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker. Today is from Boca Raton, Florida. He served as an E5 in the Marines, and we are honored to have him share some of his Marine journeys with us. There he is, okay.
First time I had to speak to anybody was my granddaughter's school. She was in the 8th grade. 1st grade to 8th grade on Veterans Day. What do you say? You can't say too hard, too much. I don't want to scare the daylights out of them. But I just talked about what it means. And I think my granddaughter really thought so. Today, I want to say something. We talk about service people who die in the service. But I will tell you, there's a lot of service people who die after because of the service. A lot.
Speak into the mic, right into the mic.
Here? Okay. And I want to say this, it's important to remember that. I had a brother in Korea, Wallace Calvert. He landed in Busan when the Marines were brought in to help stop the North Chinese from taking the whole peninsula. I mean, the North Koreans. Went from there over to Incheon and all the way up into Chosin. And because of the bugles blowing 24 hours a day for all the time there, when he came home from service, he could never sleep. Catnips at night, 10 minutes of 15, only, 1 or 2. He died at 55 of a massive heart attack because he did not let his body rest. And that's what I mean. He died in service of the country. There's a lot like that. Why do I want to be a Marine? My 101 years ago, my second greatest uncle, Ollie Calvert, was a sergeant. He was a corporal, bringing 75 German POWs to the back. And artillery rounds came. He got everybody in a ditch, but when he was getting in a ditch, a piece of shrapnel hit him right through the heart. Now think about it. In World War I, how long did it take for a family to know you were dead? About a month or so. And they never told him what happened. Never told the family. about 4 or 5 years ago, I happened to see a interview with that corporal on what happened. Can you imagine all these years today, if you have your sat phone and you're shot, you could probably, you know you're going to die, you could probably call up and tell your wife or someone and say, I'm dying. You could never do that before. My father served in the First World War, and the reason he went in is because his brother died. He was 15 going on 16. He got my grandfather to go with him and say that he was 17 going on 18, and he took him. He served 4 years on the Indianapolis that got sunk in the Second World War. And in 1942, he answered the call, leaving home with 5 kids. My sister Julia was 1, and I was 3. I saw him again August 25, 1945. Never came back. He was the Navy. And the one thing I remember, I was working at IBM in Gettysburg, Maryland, and a gentleman came in to take care of some safes that had a problem, and he was an ex-Marine. And I said, where'd you get served? He said, Guadalcanal. I said, oh yeah. I said, well, my father was from the Aleutians and went down and he set up a R&R station for Marines when they get relief from Guadalcanal. He says, what was his name? I said, well, they probably called him Two Hair. He had 2 long hairs here and mostly boy except here. And he says, I know your father. When I came waiting in, they couldn't bring the ship in. It was at New Caledonia. They couldn't bring the ship in to let them off, so they had to come in a regular landing vehicle. And as I walked up, he handed me 2 beers. And he said, boy, this is not enough. And my father said, well, look, after we get through here, I'll find you and I'll bring you a case. And he did. That's how people work and live together. You don't have to be a Marine or a soldier or Air Force. We're all the same. Secondly, I had 2 brothers in Korea. One of them was in his 3rd year as a reservist in July 1950. And the general in charge of the 1st Marine Division came up, made him stand and said, call on, sound on. Every 8th man step forward. You're now a tanker. Never seen a tank. You get in a truck, you go back to the base, take a shower, get all your clothes ready, and they're going to take you to Coronado Sound. You're going to be loaded on an LST with tanks, and going over to Korea, you learn all you need to know about tanks. That's the way things happen. And my other brother, older, who wanted to be a preacher, the following year got drafted. And he was surprised when he was drafted into the Marine Corps. And what people don't understand is President Truman hated the Marines. At the end of the Second World War, he cut the Marine Corps down to 250,000 people, and the other 1.5 million of what were left were gone. Now, the way it worked was you had to have 8 years of service, or you could be drafted and brought back in. So everybody all the Marines, that they were free, they didn't have a total of 8 years service, were activated that night in 1950. And everyone had to go back. But there was a lot had already passed their 8, and they didn't get recalled. So they had to draft people. The first time ever the Marine Corps had to draft. Everything was voluntary. He was lucky. He was in a helicopter, my older brother in a helicopter squadron. And it just wonders how people all of a sudden have to face death every day, and still do it, and not run away. I have one other reason, real reason, is in 1956 when I turned 17, 3 days later, I came down with an aggressive form of encephalitis lethargica. And when they got me to the hospital, they said I was dead. And my mother said, he's not dead. He's in a catatonic state. She, for a long time, was the head nurse at the death ward at Texas TV Center. She knows who's dead and who isn't. And made them care for me. 90 days in a coma. Eyes open, all I could do was see, but couldn't move, couldn't do anything. On the 90th day, nurse came in to give me an alcohol bath. This is the one thing I treasured, just cooled your whole body off. And I woke up and said, nurse, I'm hungry. I had nothing to eat. I dropped from 198 pounds, 6 feet, to 118 pounds, 5, 11 and a half. I don't know how I lost a half inch. It's usually because you're older like I am now and slump. And 10 days later, I was in a regular hospital room. Every day, a psychiatrist would come in, and they wanted to find out. I didn't say, I'm going to shave until I get home. No, I'm not going to shave here. They came and asked me questions. I gave them the same answer for everything. And finally, 10 days later, I called my Uncle Shelton. He was a CB who got the Second World War, and when he came in, the 1st Marine Division did not have enough component. And they took a lot of sailors and whatever to fill up the component. He was in the first wave at Peleliu, Saipan, and Tarawa. He hated the Marines. Absolutely hated the Marines. But he drove to the hospital at Parkland Memorial Hospital, came up to my room, got some clothes on, put me in a wheelchair, wheeled me out and drove me home. Finally, my mother got a call. Where's your son? And she says, in the hospital. He's gone. She went home. My uncle said, you die in the hospital. You can live here. I started senior high in our Crozer Tech in the city of Dallas that year. My mother had fed me protein. Took me from 118 to 139 in 3 months. I graduated in May in 1957, and that's the real reason I joined the Marine Corps. I wanted to prove I was a man, a real whole person. I didn't know. I only weighed 169 pounds. It was nowhere near my 198. And I went to boot camp, and you won't believe it. After boot camp, I weighed 198 pounds. My brother told me, eat all you can. You can take what you want, but you better eat all that's on the tray, or you're going into Scola and wave station. And that's the real reason. I had to prove something to myself. And do you have any time left? You know, I can talk all day, but anyway, I always see a fellow serviceman and say, thank you for your service. But what really gets me, I'm talking to a policeman I know, and someone will come up and say, thank me for my service, and say nothing to the policeman, or the EMT, or the fireman. And that just, excuse me, pissed me off. So, I'm sorry. So, I picked one major holiday a year. Our chef department is right near where we live in Florida, and I go over there on that holiday and give them a massive tray of goodies. The first time I went over, the female policeman was at the little window there and said, what do you want? I said, well, I got a package for you. Well, I mean, they got the biggest, tallest sheriff there was, with the biggest gun I ever seen, came out and was looking down to me and says, what do you want, man? And I said, this is for service and keeping us safe. I went over to the EMT, it's the same way. What are you doing this for? I said, hey guys, you already took me to a heart attack to the hospital. You got me there fast. And I told them, I really appreciate the service. And I went over to the fire department, the same thing. No one includes them as heroes. As far as I am, they are. I'll tell you a little bit of thing. In 1957, the CIA said, the key advisor to the director of CIA, that we know we have moles in the government. We think we may have moles in the Marine, and that's a problem. Because the Marines guard 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, every embassy and every independent consulate in the world. And if one of them's a mole, the Russians can get all the information they want, because they can let them in. They picked a few young men to go to counterintelligence class that they provide. In Virginia is the CIA in Virginia, and in California, it's in Lancaster, California. I know of 3 others, but I don't think it was any more, because all of us were planned to go into embassy duty eventually. And it's very interesting. You don't know anything, you don't know what's happening, but like everything else, if you're in the service, you just do whatever's told to do. And in my experience on embassy duty, I used my counterintelligence skills. I found an embassy officer who was leaving top secret data in his drawer every night. And we knew every cleaner in Egypt, I was in Cairo, in Egypt, worked for the secret police. They would go in, copy all the classified material. So I made a call upstairs to the CIA stations chief. There's one in every embassy, guys, around the world. There's a CIA guy there. And in fact, sometimes a lot of people. And I told him. He said, well, then you never heard about this. This officer every Sunday would fly in his glider out in the desert. They took him off. When he disconnected and he tried to work the controls, they all snapped. Crashed right in the desert, dead. That's the way things used to be. It used to be that way until they passed a law that the Congressional Oversight Committee had to be told when they're going to do something like that. They have to be told, and they have to be told the president. At that time, the CIA did whatever they wanted any time in the world, if they think it was the right thing to do. They can't do that anymore. So, I just am happy to be here again. I was born and raised in Dallas, never moved back, all right? Not because I didn't want to, but my job when I got out of the Marine Corps was in Washington, D.C. And spent my 30 years with IBM all around the world. So, you join the Marine Corps, you see the Navy, or the Marine Corps, you see the world. I did. Iwakuni, Japan, Okinawa, Laos, and the second Formosan Straits. You may never have heard of it. That was the time they thought China was going to take what was then called Formosa and now called Taiwan. Laos, 1953, we signed an international treaty. You got to tell me. You told me. You were telling me. Is it over? Thank you.
Isn't he wonderful? He can share with you forever.
Thank you, Sergeant Calvert, for sharing those words with our community. We really appreciate that. Thank you very much. At this time, we will have the lowering of the flags. Okay.
John, after hearing how the Marines trained tank drivers, I'm glad I signed up with the Air Force, where it took a year to get through pilot training. And Mayor, I take a small exception about this being a holiday to celebrate. I think of it as a day of remembrance and honor. And it is a privilege for me to be here in this beautiful memorial garden that not only honors the military, but it honors the police, the firemen, the EMTs, all of the first responders that make our life so good. Today, we are honored to have Mark Flores, the senior pastor at Lakeside Baptist Church, play taps for us, which he will do later on here. While each representative takes their place for the lowering of the flag ceremony, I want to share with you a little bit about their stories. For the Army, we have Mick and Ken Stevenson. They're lowering the flag in remembrance of Green Beret Sergeant First Class Riley Stevenson, who died from wounds suffered in Afghanistan in 2006. For the Navy, we have J.C. Campbell and his family. J.C. served from 1951 to 53 on the USS Frankie Evans and is lowering the flag in commemoration of 74 shipmates who died on that ship in 1963, I believe it was, in the South China Sea. For the Marines, we have Warren David Calvert, who served as an E-5 second-class petty officer in the Navy, but is lowering the Marine flag today in remembrance of his father, enlisted 3rd Corporal Howard W. Calvert, Jr., his uncle Sergeant Wallace Calvert, and in honor of his uncle Sergeant E-5 John W. Calvert, all who have bricks placed on this site. Standing with him and in remembrance and honor of all Marines is Diane Lewis of Kroger, who sponsored this site. For the Coast Guard, we have Sam Mobley, who served in the Coast Guard from 73 to 1997. Assisting him is his son, Tony Mobley, who does so in honor of his father's service in our country. For the Air Force, we have Laura Fisher and Anna Miller, who was an airman first class in the Air Force, and Bonnie Bassnight, who will join in lowering the flag in remembrance of Larry Miller, who was a tech sergeant in the Air Force. Wait a minute. You say what you want to say, Julia. She just
Well-
changes a little bit on me.
What I'm doing this for is that we try at all times, and Max is awesome, to honor and remember correctly. And we are honoring the Riley Stevens. And it's the Stevens family, not Stevens' son. And we all do that thing sometimes. So I just wanted you to be aware, and the Stevens family to be aware, that we do honor them. So thank you, Max, for your wonderful job.
Thank you. Okay, as the representatives leave the site area, the removal and encased flags that have flown over each area during this past year will be presented by Margaret Cook, Regent of the Elizabeth Crockett chapter of the DAR. And at this time, we will have the taps that the good pastor from Lakeside Baptist is playing. The pastor was playing taps in memory of his father-in-law, Army Sergeant Sam DeMaria. The Army flag will be received by Riley Stevens' brother. The Navy flag will be received by a member of J.C. Campbell's family. The Marine flag will be received for John W. Calvert.
Parade rest.
The Coast Guard flag will be received by Sam Mobley. And the Air Force flag will be received by Laura Miller. And I want to leave you with two thoughts. Freedom is never free. And all gave some, but some gave all.
Thank you. Earlier, you may be seated for a moment. Earlier, you heard that Mayor Hewlett allude to the Friends of Memorial Lane. This is our third event this month. And what a joy it has been, like my brother said, and brother, I thank you for that, sharing your heart. And he's right, you know, we honor all military, but we also honor the firefighters. We also honor our law enforcement. What a team they make. Don't they make a great team keeping us safe? So, Friends of Memorial Lane, thank you again. I want to call your attention to something. You were given programs and inside a rack card. The back of those beautiful rack cards, thanks to Visit Granbury, we now have all the patriotic programs for the year. You can look at it, see when they are, see where they're going to be. That's a good heads up. The back of the magazine some of you received have all today's activities. I want to encourage you to attend the program on the square that we're going to walk to, some of us, at 2 o'clock at Field of Flags. A gentleman who has lost both, and I believe from the knee down, is that right? He's going to do a jump with a huge flag into the Field of Flags. So if you can at 2 o'clock get to that area some way. We are so blessed. So do that. We're going to have a little surprise presentation. I've asked Mary Mullen, who created these for us, and Margaret Cook to assist me. And I'm going to ask these two gentlemen just to stand at their seats, please. Would Marine John W. Calvert please stand? Would Marine Con Shook please stand? You heard what Mr. Calvert's about. Thank you for your service. What you don't know about Con is not only did he serve there, but he has served faithfully for 3 years on Friends of Memorial Lane. Because of some health issues, he's having to, he thinks, retire. But we're going to get him to everything we can. So, if you can see these across the bottom, and they're just for Friends of Memorial Lane, but it says on the top, this one says, John W. Calvert, Hero. So would you present that to him? And Con, for your dedication to the Marines, for your dedication to Friends of Memorial Lane, for your dedication to our country and our city. We present this one that says Friends of Memorial Lane, made just for you. That says Con Shook, Hero. Thank you. You're welcome. Now for the wonderful part. How many of you are going to do the Remembrance Walk? Oh, I love it. Here's For the Ruck. Doug, you want to get your guys over there? They're going to lead it off. These guys do so much for the healing of people that are hurting. Doug, we thank you for your service. Lead up, where is Emerson? Emerson, you want to get your drummer? And get it all ready? Let's give her a hand. She's one of our GIC wonderful young ladies. She's going to lead the cadence along with Robert. They come right behind. Robert, our bagpiper, is going to be there again. What will happen is that we'll go among the flags. So if you'll follow in behind, we'll go among the flags. I want you to try to do, I can even do this. I can even walk that far and be quiet. And that's something. I can walk that far and quiet. You can walk that far and quiet. So we try to do that. Oh, you know what? I just forgot the most beautiful voice. And so we cannot ever, ever, ever forget. No, it's not you. How can I forget? It was so special in our hearts to have this young man sing, Brayton Mitchell. God bless America. So Brayton, you're never forgotten. You're just now being highlighted. So would you honor us by closing us out with God bless America? So will we please stand?
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above, from the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans, wide with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my